folks, Scott here with my 10 cards featuring the Love From Lizi July 2018 card kit. Now my favorite part of this kit has got to be this infinity stamp, this shell stamp that you can stamp on and on in every direction and just keep going, matching up the patterns on the edges. Very interesting stamp. Of course, I grabbed that first and my VersaFine Onyx Black ink and a sheet of Bristol Smooth cardstock and stamped this stamp out 6 times. It came out really great. Now, if you look really closely, you can see some mismatched seams here and there, but due to the nature of this stamp, it's hardly noticeable. And if you go in with a little black pen, you can correct most of your misalignments or gaps that you might have. I really liked how this turned out. And as I was looking at this stamp, I was looking at shells that might be able to be fussy cut away from this pattern and used individually. As far as the stamp set itself goes, the only shell on here that's actually complete is this little whelk shell right here. But if you stamp this in patterns, you also get one of those starfish that's completely unencumbered too. I was definitely in the mood to do some coloring, so I reached for my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. I was thinking of going in kind of a realistic vein for these shells. And I like using water and a brush with my Zig Clean Color markers. I know that they blend well with each other, but I wanted things a little bit lighter, a little less intense. I love how this coloring sheet came out. I love the little blue water behind in the openings. I think this is really just gorgeous and might have a hard time cutting this apart to use on my cards. As usual, I did go in with the colored cardstocks from the kit and cut them all in half to use for my card bases. I did substitute one of the smooth white Copic-friendly cardstocks from the kit with a sheet of my Recollections Craft cardstock. I thought that would be a good color for this kit, and I thought that I might be doing some Copic coloring, so I wanted to save one of those white sheets in case I did some Copic coloring. So these are my 10 card bases. Let's see what we've got this month. Now, I was a little hesitant to cut up my beautiful colored sheet of shells. So for my first card, I did reach for those decoupage sheets. So on the sky blue cardstock, we've got a nice happy birthday card. Now this is as pink as I get with this kit. I know there's lots of pink in this kit, a little hard to avoid it, but this is very straightforward. This is basically the entire decoupage sheet for my focal image here. I cut some of that striped pattern paper that matched the deck chairs just in the same width as the inside of that frame, laid that down on my card base. I assembled my decoupage on top of that, strictly by the book. Now, Lizi did include some foam squares in this kit, specifically for use with these decoupage images, but I went to my EK Success 3D dots. These are a little bit thinner than the foam squares we got in the kit. I think they work very well with these decoupage kits because once you start layering up 3 or 4 layers, they get pretty thick. So I'm using my thinnest possible foam sheets for the layering on these. This is very, very cute. I did tie a double bow for the top of this frame with that Teal Zeal 1/8" satin ribbon. I've got some of the glitter peel-offs on the 2 corners. Now, I actually ran those across the whole card behind there just so I would be sure to get them nice and square and right in the middle of the card. It's a little bit wasteful there. One little sequin down at the bottom for a little bit of sparkle. All of these decoupage sheets are just loaded with glitter and tons of sparkle. A great happy birthday card. Okay, it's a little bit juvenile, but I have plenty of juveniles in my life that celebrate birthdays. This is a bear, a puppy, a kitten. I don't think this card can be anything but cute, cute, cute. So I bit the bullet and started cutting apart my colored stamps for this next card. This is on my craft card base. We've got a Wish Upon a Star card. Now, I found a line down that pattern stamp that I could cut away and make a nice fussy cut edge. And I did put a mat behind this colored stamp, but stopped it right at the edge of the fussy cut. So it gives a little matte, black matte on the 3 sides, nothing on this side. Now, I was originally going to use the sand from the kit to cover up. This is just some of my plain ivory cardstock. I was going to use the sand on that, but I couldn't get it to stick to anything. And I realized that that sand is a tiny bit damp. Now, I believe manufacturers will dampen their play sand just a little bit to cut down on the dust when they sell it. So I got a little frustrated and threw the sand in a warm oven to dry out. And I turned to my sand embossing powder that we got in the June My Monthly Hero kit. And I used that to cover up my ivory cardstock on this side. Now, I think that worked terrifically in this application. I do like the shimmer here. I like the different colors. It does look like sand. I did fussy cut one of those stars away from my sheet and foam taped that up, added some white Nuvo drops to the center of that. I wanted that to be the focal point on my card, so I didn't add any Nuvo drops to the other starfish. I did add a little sparkle to that starfish with my Spectrum Noir sparkle pen. I went into my silhouette to create this sentiment. Now, this sentiment is actually the Paprika font. Now, that's actually a silhouette font, and it's made to be able to sketch on the silhouette. You can put a sketch pen in the silhouette. I fiddled around for a while and found a brown Micron pen that fit my silhouette and was able to draw this sentiment on a little scrap of ivory cardstock, Wish Upon a Star. I cut that out, of course, with one of my stitched rectangle dies from Lawn Fawn. This would be a great birthday card. This would be a great congratulations card. This would be a great card for many occasions. Wish Upon a Star looks like a big pile of shells has just washed up on the shore. I think that's a little bit of beautiful. Okay, now besides the stamp in this card kit, most of the images were kind of confined to the decoupage sheets. So I was looking for ways to pair up the sentiments on the stamp set with the decoupage images. So for my next card, we go to the red berry card base. I go back to the decoupage sheets and we get a Happiness Comes in Waves. I really like this. The original decoupage sheet had By the Sea as the sentiment on that background piece. I just skipped that and just cut a piece of white cardstock that was the same size as this background piece and used my ink duster brushes. I used my Monthly Hero Cloud Edges stencil and some Distress Oxide Broken China ink to stencil some clouds in the background. Now, that Broken China ink actually matches very well with the blues in this kit, so I was very pleased with that. I then went ahead and built up that decoupage on top of that using layers 2, 3, and 4. I glued those down to a yellow cardstock from my stash and a black mat, glued those both down to the red berry card base. I then cut a piece of that same yellow cardstock with one of my stitched circle dies, and I embossed that sentiment with the Watermelon Simon Says Stamp Hybrid ink and some clear embossing powder. It's a little shine to that sentiment. More sequins from the sequin mix to add a little sparkle at the top and bottom of this card. Happiness Comes in Waves. That makes much more sense to me than By the Sea. Okay, the sand from the kit is plenty dry by now. It has spent enough time in the oven. I wanted to try using that sand one more time. So on the sky blue card base again, we get Best Escape Anyone Can Have, Beach. This is my beach card for this month. This is a piece of my ivory cardstock. That sand works really good on an off-white cardstock. Now, I cut that cardstock with a little stitched hillside die of mine, and then covered it with my ATG double-sided tape. So this is just tape, no glue, that holds all this sand down. Absolutely stunning, great texture, great color. It worked really well on that ivory cardstock. I was very pleased and very happy to be able to use that sand. Now, I did cut a frame for this from my craft cardstock with 2 Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle dies. I really like the way the frame takes the blue cardstock and turns it into a sky inside the frame. That froggy decoupage sheet had the sentiment "just to say." I didn't particularly care for that. I wanted to use a sentiment from the stamp set, so I skipped layers 1 and 2, started with layer 3, and just did layers 3 and 4 for this card. So that means I can actually make 2 more cards from this decoupage sheet easily by using these great background pieces. But I went with the beach stamp from the sentiment kit, and I built this up on foam squares. I used my thin foam squares for this. Built this up. I did do a double layer of foam squares underneath that umbrella, so the umbrella looked like it was out in front of the frog and his ice cream and drink on his little cooler next to him. Nice little beach scene, best escape anyone can have. This is my 3rd decoupage card for this month. Now, I mentioned the whelk shell on the stamp that was complete and able to be cut away from the pattern and used individually. So that's what I did for this next card. This is on one of the white card bases. Shell, yeah. Oh, this makes me giggle, needless to say. Now, on this card, this is the white card base. I did take the bubble stencil that we got in the kit. Nice little bubble stencil. I used my Simon Says stamp Barely Beige ink, and I used a little finger sponge to sponge the bubbles going from the bottom left to the top right. Those are nice and subtle, very nice in the background. I knew that they would echo the circle around my shell as well. I really like that stencil. I did, of course, do some selective masking, so I just got this kind of line of bubbles going across my card. I, of course, did fussy cut that whelk shell from the stamp. I cut 2 circles from the glimmer cardstock, that specialty glimmer cardstock, and I cut those with a stitched circle die, and I cut the mat with just a plain circle die. They happened to fit very closely together and gave me just a really thin mat. So behind the shell here, we've got that blush specialty paper. Behind that, we have that soft pink specialty paper. That's foam squared up on the card base. The shell is foam squared up on that. I did cut this banner with one of my Doris banner dies. Cut that from a sheet of craft cardstock. And then I dug out this old alphabet die that I happen to have in my stash. I bought this a while ago on clearance somewhere. This is the Little Lizzie alphabet die. And it fit perfectly in this banner. Shell, yeah, I cut those out of the oyster white specialty paper, glued those down, and then used one of my Pigma Micron pens to do a little outline around all those letters, just for a little extra contrast. Some of those soft blue sequins I added to the card in and amongst those bubbles. We've got a great Shell Yeah card, and I went so far as to add a congratulations on the inside. Now, I stamped that congratulations from the Hero Arts Many Everyday Messages stamp set. Congratulations, happy birthday. This card would be useful for many occasions. Shell yeah. I do like the bright simplicity of this card and how it really highlights that beautiful whelk shell. Now we did get a great ice cream cone die in the kit, so I wanted to play with the ice cream cone die. On the white card base, we come up with "You're Just a Big Softie." I die cut the ice cream cones. For the cones, I used craft cardstock and ivory cardstock. For the ice creams, I used the soft oyster specialty paper. I used the pink shimmer specialty paper, and then I dug up this chocolate specialty shimmer paper. I believe that chocolate shimmer paper was from the August 2017 Love From Lizi kit. I told you I keep all of my scraps. That worked really good for my 3 little kind of Neapolitan strawberry chocolate and vanilla ice cream cones. I, of course, did cut a couple of those flake candy bars from that chocolate shimmer paper to use in the vanilla and the strawberry cone. I just simply took all of the little cutout pieces and colored those with my alcohol markers, glued them back into the ice cream cones. I attached those 3 cones up with some foam squares to this die-cut ice cream cone pattern paper. I used one of my large stitched circles to cut that out, and then I didn't have a good circle die for a mat, so I did reach for my Orbis circle cutter and cut the mat from this Orbis circle cutter. No matter what size circle die I might have, I can always cut a mat for it with this circle cutter. Cut that mat out of some plain blue cardstock. I took a piece of that blush specialty cardstock, cut it down to, about 3 inches wide here, glued that to the card front, and then I added all of the ribbon along the sides. We had that blue, orange, and yellow skinny satin ribbon in our kit. So I ran that ribbon through my Xyron sticker maker to cover the back of that up completely with adhesive and glued that down to the 2 sides of this card. Little stripes of white between all of those. I think that added a really nice touch, a little bit of shine to this card. I did print this sentiment using my Silhouette software. I actually printed it on a scrap of that oyster white specialty cardstock. I used the Smoothie Shop font for that, of course. I couldn't resist. There'll be a link to that font on my website at cardcutups.com. I then cut that out with one of my stitched rectangle dies. Now you'll notice that this die is shorter than this sentiment, so I did partial die cutting twice to make a full long sentiment that would fit "You're Just a Big Softie." I foam taped the matted circle up on the card base. This card feels like a whole ice cream shop to me. You're just a big softie. Nothing on the inside. This is a great fun love you card, or Valentine card, or just let's go get some ice cream card. So I really liked that Welk shell on this card over here. So I had a couple more on my colored stamp sheet that I could use. So on my golden sunshine yellow card base, we've got a "Call Me on My Shell" card. Oh, this card makes me laugh so much. I fussy cut 2 of those Welk shells from my colored stamping. I did take that green plank pattern paper. I cut that down to about 2 1/2 inches, 2 5/8, I think that is, and glued that down to my card base. I did dig into my stash of peel-offs. I remember that we had gotten some green mirror peel-offs in the January 2018 kit. They went perfectly with this green pattern paper. So I glued the plank paper down, put a thick peel-off next to that, some thin strips of that dotted pattern paper goes there, and then a really thin green peel-off goes on the edge of that. That's the background on this card. I then reached for my circle dies again, for the smallest one for behind the shells, the largest one for the sentiment. I did print this sentiment on that pattern paper before I die cut that out. That is using the Blackjack font. I had a few little experiments with that to see what size would work best. The Blackjack font There'll be a link to that font on my website. I did reach for my circle cutter one more time to cut mats for all of these. And I cut the mats from the green shimmer specialty paper. Went perfectly with this. And I really like that the circles are smaller than the shells on the two shells. It highlights them well without taking any focus away from them. Now I dug out some of that paper wrapped wire that we got in the March 2018 card kit. I thought that would work really great as a phone cord between these two shells. So I wrapped that around a paintbrush handle, then smashed it all flat, connected it between these two shells. So everything is foam square taped up on the cardstock, a couple of sequins from the sequin mix, and one of those little itty bitty tiny shells at the bottom of the sentiment there. Call me on my shell. A great pun, and I think those shells worked perfectly for this card. Makes me giggle. So before I cut that entire sheet apart and am left with no background shells, I haven't used that Celebrate stamp from the stamp set yet. So on my craft card base, we've got our Let's Celebrate card. Oh, baby. This is a riot of shells. I cut my colored stamping down to 4 inches by 5 1/4. I matted that on a thin black mat. Now I did go through and use score tape to add sand to the edges of this card base. Now you can see it. It adds a nice little texture and some nice variations of color, but that sand works so much better on a lighter cardstock. It almost disappears on this craft cardstock, though you can see it, but it is very subtle. Now, I stamped that scallop shell from the stamp set 4 times, colored that up with my Zig Clean Color markers to go in the corners of this background sheet. I did stamp those 3 little mini shells as well and colored those. And then I topped those off with some Nouveau Crystal Drops. I believe that's the Morning Dew that dries clear. Give them a little shimmer there. I stamped the Let's Celebrate on a scrap of ivory cardstock. I stamped that in my Distress Oxide Vintage Photo ink, and I embossed that with some clear embossing powder. Plenty of shine, plenty of shimmer on this card. This is my Celebration card. Let's celebrate a riot of shells. Now, I was dying to use this sentiment on a card this month and realized that one of the decoupage sheets would be a very good image to go along with this. So on the red berry card base, back to the decoupage one more time. Beach, please. A great pun here. Now, of course, on that decoupage sheet, the background did say fun in the sun. That didn't say much to me, so I just started with layer 2, layer 3, layer 5. I skipped layer 4 on this, which were the windows. So I took the windows on layer 3 and I cut those out so that layer 2 would show behind them. It made more sense to me that those windows would be behind the frames instead of in front of them. So I didn't use those windows on the front, but I love the effect that it gives looking through those door frames at those windows. Really, really nice. I took a piece of my blue cardstock that was a pretty close match, inked up the edges with some Peacock Feathers Distress ink, a piece of my ivory cardstock I cut for the beach using my, of course, my Stitched Hillside die. I did some ink blending on that ivory cardstock with antique linen and vintage photo distress ink. I did print the Beach Please sentiment directly on that ivory cardstock. That's actually in the Noteworthy font. Printed that in brown. I then built up the decoupage piece on the middle, and since there were some banners hanging on the roofline here, I reached for those little puffy stickers and made a little banner swag across the top of the card here. Now that was a little wider than my background paper was, so I cut a couple of strips of some scrap white cardstock and added that to the edges. That reaches the edges of that sticker banner, and that also reinforces the white outline that's on all those banners. Beach, please. I figured that this would be a great card to send to somebody who you're trying to wrangle an invitation to their beach house from them. Beach, please. Okay, I have used every stamp in this kit now. It's always my goal to try and use all of the stamps, but I haven't used any of the ephemera pieces. Now, 3 of those ephemera pieces were kind of just repeats of what we got on the decoupage sheets, but there was one of those pieces that featured an ice cream sundae. So for my last card this month, this again is on the Golden Sunshine Yellow card base. One of my favorite puns for this month, a Midsummer Ice Cream. Which is obviously a pun on Shakespeare's play, A Midsummer Night's Dream. I did, of course, fussy cut that ice cream sundae away from its pink patterned background. I don't need that. I dug out a piece of my yellow cardstock, a piece of my green cardstock, and created this oval to go for my background. I've always had a really hard time getting a really good mat on an oval. If you've got the right sizes of ovals to match, it's still hard to get them to match up and give you a nice, smooth, even mat on an oval. So recently I found a sale, and I purchased these Gina K Thermo Web dies in the ovals. There's the small set and the large set. Now these are made so that the small ones fit inside the large ones to make a perfect mat for that. So I used these dies to cut my yellow and green background and the black mat for that. I have to admit that they help line up your mat really, really nicely. Now I took that stencil that I made with Lizzie's kit last month, and I used that to stencil some rays coming out of the hillside behind the sundae. I think that kind of reinforces the summer feel of this card. I did add some of the Nuvo drops in white over the sundae here. I foam taped that up on that dotted background pattern paper with thin stripes of the green pattern paper, and then edged with some of those peel-offs. A Midsummer Ice Cream I printed on some scrap white cardstock using my Silhouette software. This again is in the Smoothie Shop font. I couldn't resist. It's ice cream. It worked perfectly. That's foam taped up on the front. This is really a fun, summery, great card. Of course, I can't leave well enough alone, and I thought there was a great opportunity to do a double pun here. So not only do we get a Midsummer Ice Cream on the front, but inside we get, Lord, what cool these morsels be. One of Shakespeare's most famous quotes, and it is from A Midsummer Night's Dream. Puck says to Lord Oberon, he says, Lord, what fools these mortals be. That's my double pun for you guys this month. A little bit of a literature class today. A little touch of Shakespeare for your summer and your Sundays. A Midsummer Ice Cream. This is a perfect invitation to an ice cream social. So that's my 10 cards for the Love From Lizi July 2018 card kit. I think we came up with quite a variety of cards here. I did a pretty good job of avoiding what I thought was a pretty pink kit. I only have one really pink card. Of course, like all the other Lizi kits, I have gobs of leftovers. I do have that one sheet of smooth white cardstock. I didn't get to that. I didn't do any Copic coloring. I have a lot of those decoupage sheets left, some complete that I didn't even touch, and good pieces of the decoupage sheets that I did touch. I do have a great amount of pattern papers left and a few scraps of my specialty cardstock as well. I didn't use a lot of the glitter peel-offs, but these will certainly come in handy. I did use a little bit of everything in our embellishments bag, but I did not get to the wood veneer die cuts or the colored die cuts. I didn't use that cabana ribbon, but I used all of the skinnier ribbon. I do have one full sheet of foam squares left. All of this stuff, including that terrific stencil and that amazing stamp set, all of those will find loving homes in my stash. Now, this card kit did sell out fairly quickly. I think that Infinity stamp really caught everybody's eyes. Lizzie did tell me that she has more of the decoupage sheets and pattern papers in stock ready to go, and that she will be introducing that stamp set in the mid-July release. So if you're really interested in that shell stamp set, look for Lizzie's July mid-month release, and she'll be offering that stamp set for sale. And if you like the whole decoupage thing, I know Lizzie has a mini Oh Baby kit available that's very inexpensive. It doesn't have all of the dies that came with the original Oh Baby kit, but it has all of the decoupage sheets and cardstocks and pattern papers. I do have a Oh Baby 10 card video up. I will link that at the end of this video if you want to take a look. Please, if you shop at lovefromlizi.com, please use my link down below. I had a great time working with this card kit this month. I really enjoyed that stamp. I really enjoyed the coloring of that stamp. I ended up using a lot of circles this month. I'm not quite sure why, but that's the way things inspired me. I really enjoy these cards and the wide variety here. I hope you like these cards too. As usual, I so appreciate the time that you share with me here. Please like me, list me, pin me, post me, share me with all of your friends. Don't run with scissors. And happy crafting, folks. If you'd like more detailed information, product links, and better pictures, please visit my website at cardcutups.com.